now. This is the number one issue in the country right now. 1,500 illegal migrants have crossed into the UK in small boats between December 25th and December 28th. This marks the busiest Christmas period since records began back in 2018. Nearly 36,000 illegal migrants have now arrived in the country illegally on small boats this year alone, which takes the overall total since 2018 to more than 150,000 illegal migrants entering the country. Now, Labour's strategy is clearly ineffective. It's not working. It's riddled with flaws. We have no active deterrent in place. The Rwanda plan has been completely scrapped. Policies that have been introduced under the Labour government have inadvertently made it easier to stay in this country. About two-thirds of the people who have been applying for asylum have seen their claims approved. That, I think, sends a dangerous message to many other would-be illegal migrants. Make the journey to Britain. It's worth the risk. Not to mention the fact that we are also welcoming those people with open arms, giving them cash cards, smartphones, access to the NHS, access to schools, and much more besides. Now, the human cost of all this is becoming overwhelming. At least 77 illegal migrants have now died or gone missing in the Channel this year, the deadliest year on record. We have to solve this crisis. The economic cost, meanwhile, for British taxpayers is ballooning. It's costing an estimated £5.4 billion every year. This system is costing us £18 billion on the current cohort of illegal migrants. Now, to put that in perspective, we've just taken winter fuel payments off British pensioners to save £1.5 billion. But we're spending £5.5 billion every year on this crisis. And we're smashing family farms up and down this country to save £500 million. But again, we've been spending about £18 billion on this illegal migration crisis. We've got to get to the bottom of it. Here's my view. A country that cannot protect its borders is not a serious country. And a nation that prioritises external crises, that puts external courts over our own laws, our own people, is failing its own people. I think the British taxpayers deserve so much more than this. I think the British public are utterly fed up, and I think they deserve to be treated with respect. According to a new YouGov poll, the vast majority of people in this country are utterly dissatisfied with how this issue is being managed. More than two-thirds, 69%, think that immigration in Britain is now being handled badly. In many polls, it's the number one issue facing the country today, as far as voters are concerned. Labour clearly must change its approach. The current plan is not working. It's a disaster, and it's getting worse, not better. So I think the government needs to really have a clear, effective strategy. It needs to change course. It needs to deal with these migrant crossings. It needs to deal with the soaring costs that, let's be honest, it's the British taxpayer who's paying them more than anybody else. And it needs to really deal with this exasperation out there in the country with a system that's not working and treating people with respect. We have to get control of our borders. We have to do whatever is necessary to regain control, whether that includes leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, whether it includes reforming or repealing the Human Rights Act, whether it means having an active deterrent like the Rwanda plan that puts British laws and British courts first. As ever, let me know your views via gbnews.com/yoursay. Tweet me at Goodwin MJ. But I'm joined right now by my panel, former Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle and political commentator Alex Armstrong. Lloyd, this issue is really causing a big headache for the Labour government, and Labour's failing. Wouldn't you agree?
I think most of your monologue was factually incorrect.
Which bits?
Well, to start with, the idea that Labour's policies have made things worse.
The worst Christmas on record.
No. This is... records only started a few years ago. So, yes, a few years ago, in the last government. If you look at records that go back further, which don't pick out the boat crossings, but look at illegal migration, we see this is a common pattern. Labour gets in and illegal migration has ballooned. It happened in the 90s as well, and it takes about 4 years to get it back under control. The boat crossings are reduced from about 20% down from 2022. They're slightly up over last year, but they're not up as much as 2022. And what we see is returns are much increased. In fact, returns are increased far more than the increase of the number of people coming over. So the net number of people staying in this country now is less than any time in the last 5 years. And that 150,000 figure that you said is not net. So actually, we've sent a lot of those people back as well. So this is the problem with your figures: manipulation and scaremongering.
I'm just going to stop you there. There's no manipulation. What Labour have done, let's be clear, the returns, you've returned around 9,000 or so people.
Which is more, 20% up than the Conservatives.
What the Labour government has also done, and I'm going to come to Alex on this in a second, is you've approved 2/3 of the applications for asylum. So you've allowed about 50 or 60,000 people to remain in the country.
That has always happened. That happened under the Conservatives, that happened under the last Labour. Now, what you're suggesting this is some new policy. That's not true. The standing policy has always been about 2/3. Sometimes it's been higher. Sometimes it's been almost 70% of people who have been approved because they are genuine asylum seekers. Now, what I believe should happen, and I hope that you would agree, is that we should set up a processing centre in France, in our embassy in Paris or in Calais, wherever, and we should say very kindly to anyone that crosses, we've collected you, don't worry, we'll take you to our processing centre immediately, return them back to a processing centre in France where they can be fairly processed, and some people who are genuine should be able to come over and others should not be able to.
Just hold the thought there, Lloyd. Alex, there's a lot of gaslighting going on in the national debate at the moment. Of course, what Lloyd didn't mention is that Labour softened the Illegal Migration Act, so they meant that actually what was the previous ruling, which is if you arrive in Britain illegally, you cannot stay in the country. Labour's actually quietly got rid of that. They're not really being...
It wasn't happening though, was it?
Alex, how do we fix this crisis?
Well, look, I mean, to go back to Labour policy, because one of the original questions you asked, Lloyd, was, has Labour's policies actually contributed to these increase in crossings? And the answer is yes. There is no deterrent, is there? We have nothing to stop people wanting to cross the Channel. In fact, there's incentive. We're giving them hotels, bed and breakfast, lunch, dinner, a warm room, more than our pensioners are getting, I believe. And so there's nothing stopping them. I mean, of course, we've frozen Syrian applications, but we saw today that this boat crossing that became deadly was as a result of 50 Syrian men storming the boat. So that's not stopping them either. One of the things you did say that I liked, though, Lloyd, was that we should send them back to France. And we absolutely should be. That's the last point of return where they originated from, and we should be sending them back there for processing and whatever else. Nobody should be allowed into this country when our own people have to suffer. This is Labour's choice. They are choosing to smash the gangs. Well, did we only have one press conference about one man that was so-called smashed, and they continued on anyway? So obviously smashing the gangs isn't working. 007 is not flying off to North Africa to go and smash these gangs, despite what Keir Starmer thinks Yvette Cooper's got going on with MI5. And unfortunately, the whole policy is a failure.
Lloyd, can I just press you on the numbers here? Because, we are in one of the most severe cost of living crises that we've had since the Second World War. The numbers are staggering. 5.4 billion a year on our broken asylum system, an estimated 18 billion or thereabouts since 2018. How do you, as a Labour politician, reconcile those figures with this cost of living crisis? Because let's be frank, the numbers aren't coming down. They're unlikely to come down.
Well, they're 2 billion down from the peak under the Conservative government.
How do you reconcile the amount that we're spending? British taxpayers are paying on a crisis that the Labour government is not responding. How do you reconcile it?
This straw man argument you keep putting up. The
numbers. These are real figures. I mean, the people watching this show are paying £5.4 billion a year.
The numbers are shocking, and they were paying almost £8 billion a year under the Conservatives. And so immediately we need to start getting that down. We need to scrap some of the silly hotel arrangements. We need to scrap some of the silly barge arrangements, scrap some of those silly things. We need to return people quickly, and upping the return rates means that you're not having to warehouse people in hotels. You have to start making sure that you process those applications quickly so that they can then work, and they have to work, therefore, and pay their own way if they are legitimately here. All those things need to happen, and that's what Labour's doing. No one expects it to go from 8 billion to zero in 6 months. You expect it to go from about 8 billion to 5 billion, and then to 4 billion, and that's what Labour's plan is. So stop pretending that this is some Labour crisis. This is a crisis that the country kicked out one of the worst governments that we've had in history on immigration.
I think we can all agree with that. We all agree with that.
And it takes a long time to turn the ship around. My view is that deterrents don't work. That's why they didn't work under the Conservatives as well.
Well, they did actually, Lloyd. Well, they did.
Well,
no, come on. We have to be honest about that. We saw migrants fleeing Northern Ireland to avoid the Rwanda crisis. Even if it stops 10 people, we have to say it's done something.
No,
That's 10 people that might have lost their lives.
10
in the
people
Channel.
then is still
can't say it's not
5.
deterrence when we know there were people queuing up in Calais
If you want
to wait for Keir Starmer to be Prime Minister.
If you want to reduce the billions down to sensible figures that we all want to do, hundreds of thousands. I mean, under the last Labour government, the number of people that were claiming asylum got down to about 10,000 a year. I think that's the kind of number that this country can expect to look after the people who are genuinely fleeing this country.
But
that's
not,
the
not
number that
arriving
we're targeting.
illegally. I assume you would not endorse people arriving illegally in small boats breaking our laws.
In fact, previously, more people arrived illegally. And
you're okay with that?
The number of people that arrive illegally now is actually at a historic low. It's just that they arrive illegally in a very dangerous way via the boats rather than in hiding in planes or hiding in trucks. I don't think any way to come... we need a proper way to come here. We need a proper processing centre in France. That's what I believe. That's where we need to move to.
Some might call it a Brexit benefit
I don't
that
think we should pretend... Well, it happened actually under the EU. We stopped it because of joint working. I don't think we should pretend that the number of illegal people who are coming illegally, is your words, not mine, is up because they're not.
Thank you, Lloyd and Alex. The debate's going to go on. The numbers are going up.